I know to get started is to pray. So let's just believe God together. Father, we thank you. This truly is a day you have made. We rejoice. We're glad in it. We thank you for your grace and your goodness. Thank you for working in our lives. Lord, we honor you tonight. We thank you that you've entrusted the gospel into our care and your church, in a sense, into our care, under you, of course. Holy Spirit, we just ask that you would accomplish your divine purpose in all of our lives and help us to grow, help us to stretch, help us to mature, help us to become like you. We thank you for your grace and we thank you for your goodness, and we give you all praise in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, I am going to, what we're going to do tonight, even though a number of people are not here yet, we're going to get started with the videos. And then in between, I'll do a little update on the syllabus, etc., the work that needs to be done, just to remind you. But I think we'll just get started on the videos. I do want to thank you for your grace last week in allowing me to not teach. I was just telling the other John here that I was just fried last Tuesday night. I had driven to Reno and back twice that weekend and got up at 6 o'clock Monday morning to teach, and was in teaching and in meetings all day Monday and Tuesday. And about 3 o'clock that afternoon, I thought, I just can't do anymore. I'm gonna die. So, those were things I wanted you to watch anyway during these classes. So it wasn't that it was just something I made up. It was something I already had planned. However, we would have done more than just those last week. So we got to play catch up here a little bit. So we are going to go to our videos and start with number 5. So you can be taking notes, and great teaching. And we'll start with number 5, and then we'll come in and talk a little bit and go from there. So,
law number 5 is the law of E.F. Hutton. And the law of E.F. Hutton simply states, when the real leader speaks, people listen. Now, a couple of these laws in the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership are related. For example, I have found that the law of E.F. Hutton is closely related to the law of influence. Remember, the law of influence basically says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. The law of E.F. Hutton says when the real leader speaks, people listen. Well, let me talk to you about this for a moment, because I have found that this is a key in understanding people. For example, what I have found, and there are so many examples I could give you in the law of E.F. Hutton. What I have found, for example, in a group, and let me go back to my team and using this kind of as an illustration. What I have found is that if you get in a group of people and there's a decision to be made, the people in that group will automatically look at who the real leader is. They just will. For example, let's just say Bridget is the real leader on the team, okay? What's your name? Rob John's my name. Nice to meet you. Okay. Rob, let's say we're in this group, and Bridget's the real leader, but Chuck he's kind of got the floor. He's talking about something that he'd like to see passed on the team level or whatever. Okay, now, if Chuck's talking about something he thinks very important, maybe it's a budget item, and maybe he's wanting some more money for his area or whatever it is, okay, here's what I'm saying. If Chuck's talking about something that's very important, of which a decision is going to have to be made, but if Bridget is the true leader, I mean, she's the real leader, she's the influencer, she's the E.F. Hutton, it's Bridget E.F. Hutton, okay? Got the picture? Here's what I found. You and the rest of the team, while Chuck's talking, are watching Bridget.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you're doing is, she is the E.F. Hutton. She is the real leader. And you're watching Bridget because she's going to, by her actions, give you some kind of sense of if she's excited about this or not. Does it make sense? And if for example, if Bridget starts nodding while Chuck is talking, the rest of us, we kind of smile a little bit and we start nodding while Chuck is talking. And Chuck's talking, you know what Chuck's thinking? He's thinking he's doing a good job. Chuck said, oh, this is really good. They're really, hey, I'm glad I prepared this speech. I'm really doing good. Well, Chuck, you're doing good. But that isn't why we're excited. See, we're nodding because E.F. Hutton, Bridget here, the real leader, she's nodding, and we're getting her signals from her. Just ask Chuck, if you were given the same speech, and Bridget's got her arms crossed, and it's kind of like, no, we don't want to do that, we're not, and we all start crossing our arms. You start saying, man, I'm not doing a very good job with this. Well, no, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. You see, the issue is not whether you're doing a good job or a bad job. The issue is that E.F. Hutton either likes it or don't like it, and we take our signals always from the real leader. Now, let me just explain for a moment. This is very key in leadership. Let me give you a pointer here, Chuck, that'll help you. But if you've got a proposal, you want the rest of our team here to buy into your proposal, what you really need to do before you have the meeting with us, you need to take Bridget to lunch. And you need to have a meeting with her. And you need to be saying, Bridget, I just want you to understand that this is important. And you want to get her buy-in. In fact, Chuck, if you're a smart leader, when you come to the meeting, if you've had the meeting before the meeting, again, remember? If you had the meeting before me, if you're really smart, when you do it, you'll say something like, the rest team, you'll say, team, by the way, Bridget and I have talked about this. And we think it's a good idea. Woo! That's a lot. See, because all great leaders take the vision, Chuck, from me to we. And until the vision is a vision of we, it's not a great vision. And what you need to do is you need to understand who the influencers are. You need to know who the E.F. Huttons are. And this is very key, because what I have found in leading now for 30 years, I have found that a leader's responsibility is to pick out who the E.F. Huttons are. And you know what? Bridget may be one of the influencers, maybe one of the E.F. Huttons. What's your name, sir? Jay? Jay may be one of the influencers. And see, as a leader, I say, okay, man, I need Jay in this project. I need Bridget in this project. What's your name, sir? Tommy. I might say, okay, I got to have Tommy in this project. Okay, what I do is, here's what I want you to know. There may be a couple hundred people in the studio, but what you have to know is you have to go to the influencer. And if it's Jay, and if it's Tommy, and if it's Bridget, if these are the people that are the influencers, I need to bring them in because they're the E.F. Huttons. And when they speak, they're going to carry the ball for me. In fact, here's the way I have always tried to do it as a leader. I have never had a meeting with everybody until I've had meetings with the key people. And what I would do is I'd walk into a room like this and I would say, listen, gang, I'm very excited about a vision. I'm very excited about something I want to share with you. In fact, for the last couple of days, Jay and Tommy and Bridget and I have been talking together. And what we've decided is this is the best way for the organization. In fact, let me tell you something. Tommy gave me a thought on this that was just tremendous. I'll throw in a Tommy thought. And you know what? When we talked about this, Bridget said we ought to do this. And Jay, what you said the other day about this, you know what I'm doing? I'm tying them all in. So they're not just following me. They're following E.F. Hutton, Jay. And they're following E.F. Hutton, Bridget. And they're following E.F. Hutton, Tommy. Because the real leaders have the influence, and when the real leader speaks, people listen. Haven't you seen this happen, where somebody stands up and speaks, and as they're speaking, nobody's paying any attention? Huh? Haven't you seen that? I watched them. Somebody's up there just speaking, and nobody's home. Nobody's home. In fact, there's been a lot of times I wanted to stand and say, "Excuse me, sir. Excuse me." None of us are home. I know you're exercising your jaw a little bit, but we're not listening. Remember, I'm kind of old, so I remember there used to be a TV show called The Gong Show. Yeah. And what happens, somebody's up there speaking, and when people get tired of speaking, somebody could take a big mallet, go over and gong that sucker, and they had to be done. I've always thought, every business meeting needs a gong show. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And when somebody's up there and you're just tired of hearing, you say, "Can I have the mallet, please? Can I have the not the ballot, please, the mallet, please?" And just go over and gong that sucker and let it be done. Let it be done. Because the law of E.F. Hutton said, when the real leader speaks, people listen. That's why it's so important for you and I to understand that we've got to be more than positional leaders. And in your notes, let me explain the difference between positional leaders and real leaders. Positional leaders have a title, but not always a following. Where real leaders have a following, but not always a title.
That's very true.
Positional leaders influence positional people. I've seen that happen all the time. Oh, you're Dr. So-and-so. Well, I'm Dr. So-and-so. Here's my card. Here's your card. The only people, a lot of times, position people lead or control or influence are positional people. But real leaders, they influence everyone. In fact, let me put it this way. When you have to tell people that you're the leader of the pack, you're not.
That's right.
And every once in a while, I have somebody say, well, I just have to declare my leadership. I just have to stand up and say, hey, I'm the leader. Follow? That's why I love the leadership proverb. It says, he that thinketh he leadeth and hath no one following him is only taking a walk. And don't you know, okay, people taking walks? Why? They're taking walks because they're not E.F. Hutton. So what makes a real leader? What defines a real leader? Look at your notes, because I think this is huge. Real leaders become real leaders because of character. In other words, who they are. Real leaders become real leaders because of relationships. Who they know. Real leaders become real leaders because of knowledge. What they know. Real leaders become real leaders because of intuition. What they feel. Real leaders become real leaders because of experience. Where they've been. Real leaders become real leaders because of past successes. What they've done. And real leaders become real leaders because of ability. What they can do. What I just shared with you about real leaders becoming real leaders, spend some time there. Ask yourself, am I a person of character? Do I have good relationships with people around me? Do I know what I'm doing? Do I sense what's happening to those around me? Do I have good experience? Have I had some good wins under my belt and some past experiences? And do I have just good, decent ability? Because the law of E.F. Hutton says, when the real leader speaks, people listen.
Okay, the law of E.F. Hutton, when the real person speaks, real leader speaks, people listen. So let's talk about that for just a minute. And those of you that are on Zoom can do the same. But the law of addition, when the real leader speaks, people listen. One of the things he said was leaders add value by serving others. See, servant leadership is what it's all about. I'm teaching a class for another school on servant leadership. And the question I asked everybody the other day at the beginning was, is there a difference, when it comes to leadership, is there a difference between servant leaders and secular leaders? Or is leadership leadership? In other words, are we as Christians, Christian leaders, held to a higher standard? And we discussed that in ministerial ethics 2 weeks ago, that we are in ethics, and I think we are in leadership too. Now, granted, I think leadership principles are the same whether it's secular or Christian. But the difference oftentimes between secular leadership and Christian leadership is the servant aspect. And yet I've seen some secular leaders that were better servants than some Christian leaders. And so we need to understand that there's something there having to do with servant leadership. Positional leaders have a title, but not always a following. Whereas real leaders have a following, but not always a title. Isn't that true? Functioning is more important than title. Another class I teach a lot is fivefold ministry: apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher. And the question always is, should we call people apostle or prophet? I don't think it matters as long as they're functioning. But I know a lot of people who have the title and they're not functioning. And I know other people who don't have the title, but they are functioning. Okay? So if you have to have one or the other, and you don't, but if you had to, the functioning is more important. But the thing I wanted to focus on here the most was never have a meeting before having a meeting with your key leaders. You go ahead and have that meeting without having it first with your key leaders, you're going to get blindsided somewhere. Okay? In fact, he was talking here about the real influencer is the one everybody looks to. He has another set of videos on leadership that I like better than this set. You just can't find it anymore. And it was the first video series he did. And it was more from a church/pastor standpoint, where this one's more from a leader/business standpoint. I mean, this one can apply to both. But because the other was more towards church, he used more illustrations. And he told about the time, I think it was the second church he went to. Might have been the first church he pastored. I think it was the second church he pastored. And he said he didn't take him until the first board meeting to realize that he wasn't the leader. Because he said he went into that board meeting and he suggested to the board that they do such and such a thing. And he said, the minute I said that, everybody turned and looked at Claude. Claude said what he thought about it, and everybody agreed with Claude. He said, right then I knew I wasn't the leader, Claude was the leader. So he said, I figured out if I'm going to get anywhere in this church, I'm going to have to go through Claude. Claude was a farmer. So he said, every month before the board meeting, I would go to, I'd call Claude. I said, Claude, can I come out and work with you on the farm today? Like on the Tuesday before a Saturday board meeting or whatever. Sure, Pastor, come on out. And he said, like one time, he said, I went out there and I said, Claude, we're really trying to reach new families and young kids, and we need Sunday school space. And he said, have you ever been down in the basement lately? And Claude said, oh, I've been down there in 3 or 4 years. He said, well, Claude, I went down there the other day, and he said, it's mildew on the walls. It's wet down there. He said, we really need to do something about that so we can grow the church with families. He said, Claude, do me a favor. Go down there and look at the basement. Okay, Pastor, I'll do it. So he said, I opened up the board meeting, and I said, does anybody have anything to say? And Claude said, I do, Pastor. And he looked at the other guys. He said, have you guys been down in the basement lately? No, we haven't. He said, it's a mess down there, and we need to reach new families. And I make a motion that we put money into the, all in favor say aye. Aye. Now, some people say, well, that's manipulation. No, it's wisdom. Why fight Claude? You're going to lose. You're going to lose. So get Claude on your side, right? So the real leader is the one that everybody looks to when a suggestion is made. That's why, listen carefully to me when I tell you, I am so glad that in churches nowadays, pastors don't sit on the platform. When I was raised in church, and even when I first started pastoring, I may remember that. The pastors' chairs were up on the platform. Why was that bad? Because every time something happened, everybody's looking right at the pastor to see the pastor's reaction. And if his jaw drops, theirs is going to drop. Okay? And so anyway, just a great law. Any other questions or comments?
No.
Just fixing your hair. Huh? Where is it? Yeah, you can. Should have brought it up with you instead of playing the ukulele. Any questions? Any thoughts? Anybody there with questions or thoughts? Good.
John, that's
Can you
you.
hear me? Can you hear me over here?
Andy, yeah, I hear you.
All right. So, you know what? Yeah, that's one thing that he talked about in his book. In the book, he was just talking about what you were just talking about. But I know he said there used to be a commercial where he says, well, my broker is E.F. Hutton, and everybody stopped to listen. And then he just, and everybody listened to what he had to say because E.F. Hutton was saying it. But anyway, so yeah, that just brought up a good point to where if somebody else is an influential person and you could work one-on-one with them and get them to listen, then other people will listen to them. That doesn't necessarily make them the leader, when you're influencing the person who's influencing other people, I feel.
Sure. It's true.
I got a question.
Sure.
So what do you do when your E.F. Hutton is not on board with what you want to do? He's kind of in your way.
Well, depends upon the situation. Number one, there's nothing you can do if they've got the power and you don't. You have to determine whether or not you've got power in the situation. So in other words, let's say it's the pastor that you're talking about. Well, he's got the power. You don't have the power.
Sure.
So the only thing you can do there is what'd you do? Lock it? Is rely upon relationship. In other words, it depends upon two things. Number one, who has the power? And number two, do you have a good relationship? So let's say it is the pastor and he has the power. The only means you have then is relationship. If you have a relationship whereby you can sit down and talk to him man to man and share your feelings and share your thoughts in a non-confrontational way. So, but you always have to realize if you have no power in the situation, you have no power. And if you have no relationship, that hampers the situation. So, okay. Let's take one more and then we'll go over some house cleaning stuff here.
Law number 6 is the law of solid ground. And the law of solid ground says trust is the foundation of leadership. In fact, an expression I've used often that's in your workbook is this: trust is the glue that holds an organization and the leader together. It's the glue. And I want to talk to you about trust, and I want to talk to you about integrity. I want to talk to you about character. And in fact, to build trust in your notes, there are two things that you must, as a leader, be able to do. You must demonstrate consistent competence. Obviously, you have to consistently be competent in the area in which you're leading. And secondly, you have to demonstrate consistent character. You have to consistently be a person of integrity. And I can think of no law that probably is more important to share with you than this law. And so allow me just to talk to you about a couple of experiences I've had. Recently, I was being interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, and the person that was interviewing me said, "John, I would like to talk to you about business ethics." They said, in corporate America, things are not going real well, and there are a lot of leaders that have probably violated the trust factor. So he said, if you don't mind, I'd like to do about a 30-minute interview with you on business ethics. And I know I shocked him, and I said, we don't need a 30-minute interview on business ethics because there's no such thing as business ethics. Got real quiet on the other phone. And the interviewer said, I'm talking about, what I'm talking about, all this business ethics that we've had and all the corporate side and how these leaders are just not really trustworthy. And they said, I want you to talk to me about business ethics. And I said, I'll be glad to talk to you. But I said, there's no such thing as business ethics. Then I said, there's just ethics. You either have it or you don't. And can I tell you something? If you have ethics, guess what? It works in business. And if you don't have ethics, it doesn't work in business. If you have ethics, it works in your community. If you don't have it, it doesn't work in the community. There's no such thing as family ethics or community ethics or business. No. There's just ethics. You got it or you don't. You're either a person of integrity, you're a person or you're not. You're either a person that has character or you're a person that doesn't have character. And then we got into an amazing, wonderful 35-minute conversation about integrity and character and ethics. Now, what I want you to understand about this law of solid ground is that it's character and it's also competence. I don't in any way want to take away from the issue of competence. You have to consistently perform well if you're going to lead. And you have to consistently do right if you're going to lead. And you can't substitute, you can't say, okay, I'm a person of character. I want you to follow me because I'm true to my word. I won't tell you a lie. I'm a great person of integrity. Oh, by the way, I'm a lousy leader. I'm not competent, but follow me. I don't want to follow somebody that has great character and low competence. Do you? The good news is you can trust them. The bad news is you trust them in bad places because they didn't lead you well. So it's not like I want to have you to have character without competence, but I also don't want you to have competence. In other words, be a very good leader, understand and have leadership skills and abilities. I don't want you to be a great leader and lack character because I'm not going to be able to trust you. And one won't substitute for the other. And what we have to understand about the law of solid ground is that in the law of solid ground, we either grow and get better in this area and increase our trust level, or we decrease it and we become worse in it. And the best way, I think the best way to explain this perhaps is to illustrate it. And if you allow me, Chuck, let me illustrate it to you, okay? The best way I can explain this law is building trust is like having change in your pocket, okay? And so what I'm going to do is, let's say that I just come to the company. I'm the new kid on the block, and I have a kind of a leadership position, and you want me to do well, and Chuck, you're kind of like chairman of the board or whatever it is, okay? So anyway, what you do is you give me X amount of change of which I am to operate. In other words, you feel I'm trustworthy, you hired me because of character. So okay, and what you're going to do is I'm going to either, because I'm a trustworthy person when I come to the company, I'm going to either increase the change or I'm going to decrease the change. For example, let's say I don't have very good character. I lack integrity. I'm not trustworthy. I don't always tell the truth. And so let's say, I've been here maybe 3 or 4 months, and you ask me about a report of which I make an excuse which is not true. Well, every time I do something that's not trustworthy, I give up some change out of my pocket. You see what I'm saying? But it's okay because I still have change. And as long as I have change, I can still operate because there's a certain level of trust I still have. But let's say a month or 2 later, you can find that I'm not trustworthy in another area. And perhaps I've gone over to Bridget's office, and again, she comes here and says, you know what, I don't think he's truthful with me in this matter. Well, every time what happens is, every time I don't do well, I give up change. But it's okay because I still have some change. See, as long as I have change in my pocket, I can operate. Well, let's say a few more months go by, and now there are other people who are beginning to talk about the fact that I'm not probably a person of my word, and that they're not sure they can really trust me. And so you talk to me about it. And so now what happens is there's a day when I do something I shouldn't have done, and I walk into your office, and what I've been doing is I've been using my change. I've been living off of goodwill. You follow me? I've been living off of the slack that you gave me. And this time, Chuck, I come in the office, you say, John, here's another issue, and I reach automatically. What I do, I reach in my pocket. Isn't it interesting? Instead of changing my ways, I want to live off of goodwill. And this time when I reach in my pocket this time, and when I do it this time, this is a picture of a leader in trouble.
Yeah.
I'm out of gas. I have no more change in my pocket. It's over. I'm going to have to go to a new organization. Why? Because I have used up the change in my pocket. Now, as I can deplete it by doing things of lacking character and lacking integrity, it's also true that if I do things that show character, I increase my change. I was just reading the other day, and this is huge, about a CEO that told his employees, brought together a company meeting. He said, let me tell you something. If anybody in this company asks you to do anything that's wrong, here's my personal phone number. And anybody ever asks you to tell a lie, anybody ever asks you to fudge a report, anybody ever asks you something that violates your integrity, he said, you don't need to go to your supervisor. He said, you call me immediately. I thought, what a huge statement. Well, Chuck, if I'm trustworthy, and you begin to see that I am a person of my word, and that I do follow through, and I do take responsibility, what happens is you start giving me some change. And so I come back. Chuck, look at that. I love this. Come here. Hey, Chuck. Now, Chuck, I've given him a 5. I've given him a 20. I've given him, I even gave him $100. I mean, I gave him some bills. You got me? So when Chuck is now giving me back change, he looks through all the bills and gives me a 5 back. I mean, Chuck, he's very stingy now. He's slowly, all right. If here's 5, here's 5. Now, let me just stop here for a moment, because Chuck and I didn't plan this at all. We're just talking. But I want to tell you something. This is exactly the way it works.
That's right.
Listen very carefully. In the area of character, you lose it a lot quicker than you get it back.
That's right.
And when you start violating issues of integrity with people, and they begin to realize that you've probably manipulated them, violated them, I promise you, that as you try to build that trust level back, they'll dole it out $1 at a time. You lose it a lot quicker than you gain it. Does that make sense? Now, what's happening here in this illustration with Chuck is, if I continue to be trustworthy, Chuck will give me a little bit more change. And you're still going to the lowest dollars, aren't you? And I say thank you. And by the way, every time he gives me a little bit of change, well, I've got more change in my pocket. And then we come up with another time, and I do. And I'm just showing trustworthiness. I'm showing character. I'm showing integrity. I'm making right decisions. Maybe not even good for me, but good for the company. And I get a little more. And every time, wait, Chuck. And you know what? After a while, I start liking our meetings. Because I'm liking our meetings because I'm gaining change. So I had a guy one time tell me, so well, I don't like my board meetings. I don't like my meetings when I get the key players together. And I says, because you're losing change. Let me tell you something. If you're losing change with people, you don't like meeting with them.
That's right.
But if you're getting change, if you go to a meeting, you're going to get some more bucks. Huh? Well, you say, this is going to be a good meeting. See, you're either building in, you're either depositing or you're withdrawing in this area of solid ground and trust. And so I do well, and I get a little bit more. And this is the 4th time you give me something. 3 times I had all the money. Do you? And it's taken, but I do well, and I keep coming back, and finally I get that last piece. Yeah. Now here's what I want you to see. Here's what I want you to see. You're on solid ground when you walk around your company, or you walk around your department, or your place of business, and your pockets are loaded with change. In fact, if you have to walk around with a limp, why are you limping? I'm just loaded with change. That's your goal. In fact, the goal of a leader is to increase his or her change in their pocket. In fact, let me say this. Hang on. Here we go. You cannot make changes in the organization unless you have change in your pocket.
That's right.
It takes a lot of change in your pocket to make big changes in your company. Isn't that true? But if there's a high integrity level, there's a lot of trust level, and the law of solid ground is there, you can make a lot of huge changes. It can be very, very successful, but it takes change in your pocket to make changes in your organization. And I want you just to take a moment and look at a couple of statements I have in your notes. Statements such as, a leader cannot continually break trust with people and continue to influence them. Oh, the questions are huge. Questions such as, do I have change in my pocket? Is my change increasing or decreasing? Do I pass the integrity test? Somebody says, what's the integrity test, Joe? The integrity test is this. With integrity, the longer I lead, the better it gets.
That's right.
Without integrity, the longer I lead,
The
the worse it becomes. That is so true. The law of solid ground says trust is the foundation of leadership.
Okay.
All number,
Let's talk about it for a minute. Any thoughts? Any questions? Anything strike you well there?
Just how the competence and the character, how you just said it's really, you can't divide them, or you can't separate them. You got to have both. One doesn't make up for the other.
That's right.
That's good.
Competence and character. It's true. Anyone else? Trust is the foundation of real leadership. If people do not trust you, they will not follow you. Okay? And just like he said, in the area of character, you lose it a lot quicker than you get it back. The same thing is true with trust. You lose it a lot quicker than you get it back. You have to earn it back. And trust is the glue that holds the organization and the leader together. I think it's important when it comes to these concepts that we understand that the way in which we lead is going to determine the way in which they follow. And if they're not following like we want them to follow, it's probably that we're not leading the way we should be leading. As an example, remember he said, if you have a lot of change in your pocket, you're able to make a lot of changes. A lot of times people are trying to make all these changes and they have no change in their pocket. They've not built a trust factor with the people. And I think that we build a trust factor with the people in two ways. One way you build a trust factor with the people is by being successful and correct in your decisions and where you lead them. A track record of success. I think the second way you build trust with your people is when you lead them wrong, you take ownership and you admit it and you ask forgiveness. And because what does that do? In my opinion, that builds trust. Okay, their heart is right. Maybe they don't always make every right decision. I don't make every right decision. But their heart is right, and I know that they're trying to lead me the right way, and I know that if they lead me wrong, they're going to admit it. And we're going to make the changes that need to be made. So I don't think that failure itself destroys trust. Failure destroys trust if we don't take ownership of our failure. Does that make sense? Any thoughts, any questions?
I think what you just said is actually really good. I really like what you said. It's not just about trusting us when we have a good track record, but if we make a mistake, like you said, when we make a mistake and we take ownership, people will know where we're coming from. And that's very trustworthy also, I believe.
Yes, it really is. Thank you.
I think also it allows your people to respect you more.
I think so. I believe so. It's true. It's proven that way with me through the years.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to make sure that you don't have to apologize every week.
Yeah.
But when you do make the mistake, you apologize. Yes. Anything else? Okay, let's go one more, and then we're going to go over a few things that we have to deal with tonight, or we get to deal with tonight. The law of respect.
The law of respect says people naturally follow leaders stronger than themselves. Now, I've got a question I want to ask you, because this law of respect really has huge implications in your leadership life. Here's the question. And in the studio, while I'm asking my friends in the training tapes, I want to ask you the very same question. How many of you would like to lead more people and a higher quality of people at the same time? Huh? In other words, how many of you like to have increase your quantity and increase your quality? Now, if you raise your hand, and they all did here, if you raise your hand, I'm here to tell you that the law of respect will teach you how to do it. And the best way that I can illustrate how the law of respect plays into not only leading more people, but leading a higher quality of people, let's go back to the hand illustration I used when I talked to you about the law of the lid. If you remember when I talked about the law of the lid, I said, if you're a leadership, if this hand represents my leadership, and let's say it's a 4, and this hand represents my business, so the lid of my leadership will contain or hold down my business. If my leadership's a 4, my business is a 3. You know, it's just not going to go any higher. It's going to be contained under my leadership effectiveness. Now, when I was teaching that law, I was talking about the size of your organization, and that you cannot grow an organization bigger than you are. And that's very true. The law of respect, I'm using the same illustration now. You not only, if the law of the lid will not only allow you to grow an organization bigger than you are, it will not allow you to attract people better than you are. Let me explain. If I'm a 4 as a leader, okay, if I'm a 4 as a leader, the people I attract to me will basically be 3s, 2s, and 1s. Does that make sense? In other words, when we teach the law of magnetism, which is another law, which I will teach later on, when we teach the law of magnetism, well, the law of magnetism basically says you attract who you are, not who you want. Well, in the law of respect, I'm saying people follow leaders that are strong themselves. So in other words, if I'm a 4 as a leader, I'm not going to attract a lot of 7s and 8s. 7s and 8s aren't going to follow me. And I have a quote in your note this is huge. It says, the more leadership ability a person has, the more quickly he or she recognizes leadership or its lack in others. Now, that is just a huge statement. So let me explain what I mean by that. Haven't you been in a room where perhaps you were a better leader than the person that was leading? And you realized that you were a better leader. I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm not talking about thinking more highly of yourself than you should. It's just the fact that you knew you were a better leader. Now, if you're a 7 as a leader and you happen to have to follow a 4, you're not going to want to do that. In fact, that's why there's so much frustration in the workplace. Isn't that true? There's frustration in the workplace because you've got people that are perhaps better leaders that are underneath a lesser leader, and it causes all kinds of conflict. Now, here's the good news. Let's go back to the illustration I used, the handicap. If I'm a 4 as a leader, and I go from a 5 to a 6 to a 7, in other words, I can learn leadership. When I grow, I learn these laws. I apply them in my life, and over the process of time, I become a better leader. If I go from a 4 to a 7, not only do I increase the quantity of my organization from a 3 to a 4 to a 5 to a 6, I increase the quality of people I attract. All of a sudden, if I'm a 7 as a leader, I'm attracting 6s. Now, think about it. As a 4 of a leader, I was attracting 3s. Now, what I'm saying to you is I've now doubled the quality of a person that I've attracted. And this is huge. And here's why it is. I was doing a couple of years ago a national conference for Chick-fil-A. And during a question and answer period, a person raised his hand and he asked me this question. He said, John, how do I find leaders? Find potential leaders. So I want to find potential leaders for my organization. And when he said, how do I find potential leaders? I looked at him and I said, you have to know what they look like. But let me say something else. You can't attract potential leaders if you're not a leader yourself. Like begets like. So in this law of respect, what I'm saying to you is, as you grow as a leader, you're not only going to increase the quantity as far as the size of your company, you're going to increase the quality, the kind of people that you attract to it. And here's why. People don't follow people by accident, and people don't follow people that are not good leaders. Let me explain it to you this way. When people respect you as a person, they admire you. And it's wonderful to be admired. When people respect you as a friend, they love you. But when people respect you as a leader, they follow. I remember several years ago, I did a lesson called RESPECT. Tell me what you think of me now. I didn't sing or dance. But basically, I was trying to share with people how important it is to have respect. Now, what I want you to understand is respect is not a given. It's earned. In fact, if you think back at the law of influence, when I taught you about the 5 levels of influence, I taught you that the highest level was the personhood level, and the key word there was respect. People follow you because you've done so well with so many for so long that you've absolutely gained their respect. Now, you have to gain respect. It's not a given. It's something that has to be earned. So in your notes, let me share with you how to earn respect, how to gain respect from other people as a leader. Number 1, have a respect for other people. It's very important for you as a leader to be respectful of other people. The best way I can explain it is I observe leadership and observe leaders all the time. And I mark a man or a woman, I mark a leader if they don't respect their people. For example, I think it's a character flaw. For example, if I'm leading and you happen to be the people that I'm leading, you have to be my people. I think it's I look for a leader to have respect for the people with them, but then, quote, this is not a good phrase, but I'm going to just use it to illustrate people that are under them. Here's what I want you to understand. When a leader powers up on people beneath them, or takes advantage of people beneath them, or manipulates people beneath them, or doesn't respect people beneath them, I think it's a huge character flaw. In other words, when you have power on people and you misuse that power, I think you have violated your leadership. Does that make sense? And it's amazing how a person behaves, quote, when they can get by with it.
Yeah.
Did you get that? And when a leader can, quote, get by with treating people unkindly or kind of, quote, running over them or taking advantage of them, whenever I see that happen, I always look at that leader and I realize that they have a character flaw. Because the best way to get respect from other people is to give respect to people. And the moment that you and I do that, then respect begins to be returned to us. So step number 1, I suppose, really has nothing to do with leadership. It has to do with the golden rule. It has to do with respecting other people. The second way to gain respect is by courage. I have found that in the area of leadership, people will respect you when you make a courageous decision. And I define a courageous decision this. A courageous decision is one that I make because it's right, not because it has a probability of passing, or not because it benefits me. It's just a right decision. That's courage. The ability to be courageous and step out and make decisions that benefit your company but don't benefit you. Benefit your people but don't benefit you. That's a courageous decision. Thirdly, I think that you earn respect by success. People want to follow successful people. Let me put it this way. Have you ever known somebody who said, I'm just looking for a leader? Have you found a leader that just fails a lot? Man, I would love that. Are you a leader that messes up? Do you just kind of get into dead-end streets and kind of blow yourself out of the water? Because, boy, could I attach myself to you? I've never known a person who said, boy, if I could just have a coach that's a bad coach. You know what I'm saying? Boy, if our team could just get a coach that loses all the time, that would be huge for me. No, you got to have success. Because people want to go to the top and they want to get with people who can take them to the top. So if you want respect, you've got to get some success under your belt. Number 4, consistency. Just the ability to keep on keeping on and day in, day out, be the same. Consistency is huge because people want to follow somebody that they not only trust, they want to follow somebody that's dependable. Number 5, you gain respect when you add value to others. Oh, I love that. The ability to add value to others, to come alongside of them and really take them to a level that they would not go on their own. That gives you respect. And finally, number 6, just pure leadership ability. The ability to to lead people effectively is absolutely important in gaining respect. Now, let me just close this law of respect by sharing with you that there are two what I call kind of like acid tests of respect. In other words, when people come to me and they say, John, do you think I have the respect of people around me as a leader? There are two ways that I can always look. I can look at you, I can look at myself, I can look at anybody in a leadership position, and I can tell you how you can know if you have the respect of your people, and you can go to the bank on these two things. The first test of respect is the response of people when you ask for commitment. They will only commit if they respect you. I have watched it happen time and time again. When you have a group of people and they don't make the commitment necessary, it's almost always a lack of respect to the leader. And the second area, the second test of respect, is the response of people when the leader asks them to change. You show me a group of people that will make big commitments and major changes. I will show you a group of people that highly respects their leader, because people will not make commitment and not make changes unless they really respect the leader. You don't do that for somebody you don't. You don't make changes. You don't make commitments for somebody that you don't respect. So when somebody comes to me as a leader and says, John, do you think my people respect me? I ask them this very simple question. Do you find the people that work with you, do they make commitments, major commitments, and do they make major changes for the organization to be successful? If so, they respect you as a leader.
Okay. Very good. Thoughts, questions?
It's my favorite song.
Pardon me?
It's my favorite song.
Respect.
What was that first test? People will help.
Of people when you ask for commitment.
Response for people when you ask for commitment. The second is when you ask them to change. Illustration of that is, and I'm not saying this for any self-glorifying reason, but when we at Turlock made the decision to become a part of One Church, that was a big commitment and that was a big change. But they came along. Why? Because for 7 years, I had been gaining their respect. And they had been following me, and they followed me this direction as well. So anything else?
I think it was really good when you said the more you grow as a leader, the better quality of people you will attract. And a lot of times people in leadership get frustrated with the people that are under them, but they forget to look in the mirror and realize that they're not growing themselves, but they're expecting their people to.
Right.
And so I think that was a really good reminder to all of us as leaders in whatever capacity.
Very
That
true.
in order to get better people, we have to better ourselves.
Very true. Anyone else? Okay, I want to. You guys were seeing that, right? On the Zoom? Oh, well, you should have told me. It just dawned on me that I wasn't sharing it.
I've been looking at a close-up of your face the whole time.
You should have told me. It just dawned. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't see that and you guys at the same time, and it just dawned on me because I didn't share it. So you've got to keep me on the straight and narrow, guys. I'll share the rest of them here, okay? But let's go here to now. We'll share this, and I'll be able to see you all at the same time. See? Couldn't figure out why that wasn't working. A couple things I want to go over before we continue here. I'm not going to go over the syllabus again, except that you do have a leadership book report due, either the Blanchard or the Dupree for a book report. 2 to 3 page double-spaced book report. And so you need to purchase one of those books if you don't have them. One is The 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard, or Leadership as an Art by Max Dupree. Okay? And tells you how to do it there. Then a leadership movie. You choose one movie from the class list and view the movie as you fill out your evaluation paper only after this week, but preferably after week 4. And then you bring your evaluation paper or email it to me. And then a final exam, 21 questions with a question from each law, and 4 essay questions regarding this course and or leaders. So just want to keep you up to date with that. And any questions on that? Okay. And you remember the movie assignment? That's one of those movies. Amazing Grace, U571, remember the Titans or Glory. Okay? Those are the things you're supposed to answer about it. Just wanted to remind you of that. Now, the other thing is, I have a bunch of your past work that I'm going to pass out to the ones that are here. This is the other Jonathan. There's Andy's. Josh, there's yours. And Jenny, you can take hers to her. And let's see what else I have here. I also have your grades. I haven't graded Romans yet, but my wife has graded both of her classes, and I've graded one of mine. We're going to send you those grades via email, hopefully tomorrow. But if we don't get that done, we'll get it done very soon. Take those. And I do have the grades with me tonight, so if you want to know what you got prior to us sending it out, I'll be happy to, at the break, share that with you. That's on 3 of the 4 classes. And then the final thing that I wanted to go over is, it's only 3 more weeks before we start the next set of classes. And if you haven't looked ahead, they go quick, don't they?
Oh my gosh.
If you haven't looked ahead, the next 2 classes are eschatology, which is end times stuff, and prison epistles. And so those are the next 2 classes. I do have a couple prison epistles books. I have the books for prison epistles. But the books you need are already on our website. You can go there and see what books are required for those classes. So I just wanted you aware of that. First come, first serve on those 2 I've got for prison epistles, those 2 books. And just wanted to keep you up to date on that. So final thing on all of this is, if you are a student who's not yet paid for some of your classes, we can do it between these classes, or let me know what your plan is to get caught up if you're a little bit behind. And we'll go from there. Okay, that was quick, wasn't it? Let's go to the next one. And I'll be able to see you guys now, because you'll be able to see them, because I'm going to share it.
The 8th law is the law of intuition. And the law of intuition
Sorry about that.
Basically, leaders evaluate everything with a leadership bias. Now, let me say something about this law, the law of intuition. This is so important. In fact, let me say this. The best leaders, when I shared with you on one of the other leadership laws, the law of process, about our leaders born, and I told you that some people are born with leadership leanings. Let me just say this. Of all the 21 laws, this law is most closely associated with people that have what I call leadership leanings. If there's a law for, quote, the next-born leader, it's the law of intuition, it's the law of timing. Because those are the 2 most difficult laws to learn. They're the 2 most difficult laws to teach. And so therefore, while I'm teaching to you, I want you to understand, I realize I have a major task in front of me for the next few minutes. And the reason they're the most difficult to teach is because intuitiveness and timing are very subjective. And only people that have natural leadership bents naturally pick them up. So if you don't have natural leadership bents, you can learn to be intuitive, but it's going to be a long process. I promise you that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me give you the flip side for it. Probably no law of leadership puts a leader at an advantage more than the law of intuition. Let me tell you why. In the law of intuition, basically, it allows you, the law of intuitiveness allows you as a leader to see things and sense things more quickly than anyone else, and it gives you a distinct advantage of a leader. Let me give you an example of that. I can win a 100-yard race against the fastest human being in the world if there is a condition. Look at this body, there has to be a condition. I can run a 100-yard race against the fastest human being in the world if I get a 50-yard head start. And I just want to stop here for a moment and say I have carefully considered the 50-yard head start. And I'm starting to say I maybe need a 60-yard head start. And you say, well, of course you can win the race. Of course you can win the race if you have a 50-yard head start. It's the whole point of the law of intuition. You know what the law of intuition is? The law of intuition gives you a head start on everybody else. In other words, it allows you to win the race. The fastest person doesn't win the race in leadership. It's the person who got started quickest. Understand that. And the law of intuition gives you what I call the leadership jump start. It allows you, it allows me to get going before anyone else can get going, and therefore we get to the finish line first. And somebody says, well, how did you get to the finish line? Are you the fastest? No, I'm not the fastest. It's not the fastest, it's the first in leadership. And what you have to understand is the law of intuition allows you to be first. So, let me see if I can do a good job teaching this law. The first statement I want to make is this one. In intuitiveness and in intuition, it's important for you to understand who you are, because in the area of intuitiveness, here's the way this works. Who you are determines what you see. In other words, if I'm a leader, I see everything through leadership eyes. If I'm a navigator, I see everything through a navigator's eyes. In other words, you and I see not what is, we see by who we are. Classic example is every once in a while I'll do something that's way out of my gift zone, just for an experience. I had a wonderful friend who loved nature. And I remember we used to go on hikes together. His name was Paul. And Paul would say, oh my goodness, did you see that bird? Did you see that ground? And he'd talk about all these things, and no, that's it. That's it. Well, Paul said, it was right there. It was right over there. Did you see it? No, that's it. Why did Paul see all of nature and I didn't see a lot of nature? Because intuitively, that's who he is. He's a nature. Understood? Mr. Magoo walking through the field, not having a clue what's happening. Who you are determines what you see. For example, my gift is communication. I do communicating almost every day of my life. And so whenever I have to communicate, whether it's in training sessions like this or in major auditoriums and stadiums across the country, it doesn't matter. I'm not nervous. I'll be honest with you, I just don't get nervous. People say, well, are you uptight? No, I'm not uptight. I'm going to go out and do what I love to do with people I love to do it with. And I'm going to have a great time. And so I enjoy it. Why? Why? Because it's my gift. My wife, Margaret, who in her earlier years was a school teacher by profession, communication is not her gift. And I always hate it when somebody, because they say, well, would you come and speak to us? Ask Margaret to come and speak to us, because if they ask Margaret to come and speak to them, I know what's going to happen. She's going to come to me. She's going to say, John, they want me to speak to her. What should I say? Now, let me just stop here for a moment. If you don't know what to say, communication is not your gift. What do I say? So over the years, because we've been happily married for well over 30 years now, she knows that no longer does she come and ask me what to say, because I say, Margaret, so now she'll say, okay, don't tell me what to say. She said, just tell me, how do I get started? How do you get started? And like maybe she's going to go speak at a banquet. I'll say, well, just kind of listen to what people say before you speak and play off of them. And somebody says something, you get up and you just start talking about that. And she hates that answer. Well, I'm not trying to confuse her, and I'm certainly not trying to frustrate her. It's how I do it. Why would I do it that way? It's my gift. It's who I am. Now, let me flip it for a moment. Let's talk about clothes. You don't know anybody that's bad at matching clothes. I mean, I have this clothes closet, and I have been known to go in my clothes closet, close the door, and just stare at stuff. For 15 minutes, paralyzed. I'm a leader. I'm paralyzed. Kind of drools coming down on me. Mara will say, John, are you in the closet? Yeah. You need help? Oh, yeah. She'll come and say, what are you doing? And I'll tell her what I'm doing. And she'll say, oh, wear this sweater, these slacks, and these shirts. And she'll put everything up, and she'll throw it kind of to me, kind of like a piece of garbage. I'm a beggar collecting things. Oh, thank you. And she looks at me, and she'll come and say, John, why haven't you figured this out? Because she'll go in and say, she'll try to help me in colors. She'll tell me all these principles and all these laws of the clothes club. And she can't figure out why I can't get it. Well, I can't get it because it's not who I am. It's not my gift. I'm not intuitive in that area at all. Now, what I do is, when she'll say, okay, this sweater, these slacks, well, a lot of times is what I've done. I'll put the sweater and the slacks on the same hanger. And then the shirt, and I'll just say, this is really great. Because then I know, sometimes when I don't have time to ask her, I'll just put them on. And so maybe a week later, I'll go in and put the outfit she gave me the week before on, and I'll be so excited because I know they match. And I'll walk out. As soon as she sees me, she'll look at me and she'll say, are you wearing that again? I can wear the same thing every day and be happy.
Yeah.
Oh, she said, that's so boring. She said, you wore that last week. Don't do that. She said, people will see it. Then she'll go in and she'll take the same sweater, put it with a different slacks and different shirts. And I know she does that just the best. And it works. I'm totally confused. Or I love it. Sometimes I'll get dressed and I'll sneak out of the house before she's up, and I'll come back and I'll walk in the house and she'll look at me and she'll say, did you wear that? It's on my body. And she's saying, did I wear that? No, I'm buck naked. It's a mirage. Or I want to say, no, I had a good outfit and I changed in the garage before I came in the house. Just a mess you were. Now, what you have to understand is, Margaret still, to this day, can't figure out how I can't figure it out. It's not who I am. Here's what I want you to understand, and here's the key point. You're intuitive in the area of your giftedness. So whatever you're gifted in, you're intuitive in. And leaders are readers. They have the ability to read a situation. Why? Because they have some leanings in giftedness and intuitiveness in the area of leadership. So they see everything through the leadership grid. And what the leaders read and what the leaders sense. Since leaders are readers, what are they? Leaders are readers, number one, of people. They have the ability to see people. Not only just see people, but to understand where they are. Classic example. When I'm in a conference, if Margaret, my wife, happens to be with me, sometimes at the end of the conference, she'll say, a guy came up to you in that gray sweater. What was he talking to you about? I don't have a shot. I don't remember anybody coming up in a gray sweater. I don't remember anything that anybody wore. And she'll say, the guy with the gray sweater. The guy with the gray sweater. Why? Because she's very color conscious. I'm not conscious. If I could figure it out, I could tell her who was it talked to me and basically what they said. But see, I'm a reader of people. I'm not reading what you wear. I'm reading where you're going and who you are and what you're thinking and where you are in the group of people. Leaders are readers of people. They have a sense of where people are and how people feel and how people think and how people are responding. They pick up on that. Their leaders are readers of opportunities. Oh my goodness. They see an opportunity coming. In fact, they're kind of amazed. They look around and say, doesn't anybody else see this opportunity? Am I the only one that's getting on the opportunity bus? And they are. They get on the opportunity bus, and everybody else, they're around the depot and having a croissant, you know what I mean? They don't have a clue. They don't even see the bus. Leaders are readers of opportunities. Thirdly, leaders are readers of the environment. They have a sense of what's happening in the environment around them, and they can feel things. Number four, they're readers of timing. They understand the ebb and flow of timing and when to seize the moment as they can and when to let the moment go. Number five, they're readers of motives. They have the ability a lot of times to not only see what a person does, but have a sense of why they do it. They're readers of the future. I'm not talking about some kind of a person with a crystal ball, but they have a sense of what's coming around the corner. They can sense what's approaching and what's up in front of them. Number seven, leaders are readers of the placement of people. They know where to put people. They have a sense of what people's giftedness are. So they kind of say, I think they would maximize their potential in this position. And finally, I think leaders are readers of the process. They understand process well. They understand that it not only it takes a while for them to develop in a daily sense, but they also realize it takes time for people. And they can kind of look at people and know where they are on their journey and how far they are from becoming the leader perhaps that person wants to be. But here's what I know. Leaders are readers of people. And the law of intuition basically says that if you can be intuitive, you get a head start. Now, one more comment before I go to the next law. If you find that this isn't a strength of yours, and many of you will be very frustrated with this law because it's a little bit subjective, I would just suggest a couple of things to you. One is find an intuitive leader and hang out with them. Because I have found that if you hang out with an intuitive leader and ask them questions about why they did this or why they said that or why they went there, that many times they'll give you a read of how they can see things. And if they give you a read of how they can see things, they'll begin to teach you to see those same things. I would say, secondly, also, it's lead out of your giftedness. Whatever your strength is where your intuition is. So therefore, for example, when you get to the law of navigation, if you're a good navigator, like Chuck is, it's very simple. What you do is you start leading out of the day-to-day navigating with people, and you'll find that you're very intuitive in that area. Stay in your strengths, because it's in your strengths that you can lead people effectively.
Okay. Thoughts, questions? I mean, you know me, I could talk on these things forever, but I'm trying to.
That one's really funny.
What?
About the clothes.
About the clothes? Well, in fact, when you hear him, I've heard him teach so much. Nowadays, his wife has numbered. I think she put letters to. I think it was his shirts and or letters to numbers to his shirts and letters to his pants, I think. And then she gives him this list, and she'll say to him at night when he calls, he's out teaching somewhere or something, and they'll be talking. She said, "What'd you wear today?" And he said, "A4." You know, because that way she knows what colors went with what.
Oh
and
my gosh.
and
That is crazy.
and he said one time his wife was gone, and he said it was Sunday morning, and he walked into the church, and one of the ladies looked at him and said, "Margaret's gone, isn't she?" He said, "I knew right then I had the wrong stuff on."
Oh my gosh. I feel like Pastor Janie does that for you.
She's always working on me about my clothes.
I know, I've heard her.
Okay, any thoughts on things other than clothes?
I'm good.
How about the thing there where we're saying leaders are readers of people, of situations? See, leaders see things other people don't see. They have a sense of being able to see what's coming down the pike. We watched a movie last night. Really, it's a biographical movie, a historical movie, and it was on Commodore Vanderbilt and the Rockefeller.
Wow.
And the way they portrayed them, and you knew it was true, they saw opportunity. They saw what was going to happen, like with railroads and with oil. And when they could see in the future what was going to happen, they would take every penny they had and invest in that future thing when others were afraid to touch it. And that's how they become to them it was multimillionaires. That same amount of money today as multi-billionaires. But millionaires of their time, but they took risks that other people wouldn't take. Why? They were able to read the landscape of what was going on around them. And leaders are that way, and leaders see things before other people see them. Managers don't see them. Managers are able to manage what's going on, but leaders can see what's ahead. The problem with that is if leaders don't realize that not everybody's like them, they tend to alienate people rather than bring people along. And so leaders have to realize that they're not really leading if they're not bringing people along.
Taking a walk.
They're just taking a walk. Any other questions or thoughts on this law of intuition?
I was just listening to a leadership podcast by Craig Groeschel the other day, and he was talking about this law, kind of like seeing what's ahead and not predicting the future, but just being aware of where our society is going and our culture. And so he was talking about a lot of churches now are running into the issue of parking, and so we're spending all this money redoing our parking lots and adding parking spaces. But he's like, the way I see it is, in a couple of years, people won't even be driving to church now with Uber and Lyft. And so he's thinking for his church, he needs a way to make it easier for drop off and pick up versus spending all this money and adding parking spaces. And
Sure.
so, yeah, it's still super relevant, I think.
Right. Very true. Anyone else? Okay, let's go to the next one. We're getting through a lot of them today, so that's good. The law of magnetism.
In the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, the 9th law is the law of magnetism. And the law of magnetism says who you are is who you attract. Let's do an exercise. Since this is a training and leadership type of an exercise, I realize that maybe we'll even want to turn off the tape for a few minutes and do this on your own before you proceed. But let's do an exercise. What I want you to do is I want you to write down the top 3 qualities in people that you would like to attract to your organization. Now, as you write down the top 3 qualities of people that you would like to attract, I want to just take a time out for a second and let you do that. In a moment, I'm going to come back and I'm going to let you look at those 3 qualities, and I want to do my teaching from what you put on paper. Now that you're back, let's look at those 3 qualities that you have placed on the piece of paper. I want you to look at them because whatever 3 qualities that you have placed on your paper, what I want you to understand is this. You won't attract people because these are 3 qualities of people that you want to attract. You will only attract people of these qualities if you possess these qualities yourself. For example, on my piece of paper, I said if I'm going to bring people around me, I want to bring people that have leadership abilities, I want to bring people that have integrity, and I want to bring people that have a great attitude. Now, those are 3 important things to me. Integrity, attitude, leadership ability. Those are the kind of people I want to attract. Now that I put my list down of the 3 qualities of people I want to attract, the question I've got to ask myself is not where are those people? The question I've got to ask myself is, do I possess those qualities? Because if I possess those qualities, if I'm a good leader, if I have a great attitude, if I'm a person that's filled with integrity, if I possess those qualities, I'll attract people because like begets like. So every once in a while, what I do is I run into leaders and they'll say something like this. They'll say, John, I need a person of high energy in my company. Boy, we need some initiative, high energy people in my company. And whenever they say that, I look at them and say, let me ask you a question. What's the question? Do you have high energy? Do you take initiative? Because if you do, I got good news for you. You'll attract people like that. But can I tell you something? If getting out of bed is a challenge every day, and you need a nap in the afternoon, you understand? You're not going to attract a lot of high energy people. Because high energy people don't look around and say, man, do we need to find somebody that's slow and lazy? Well, I can just see somebody that's moving, but you can't tell they're moving. That's the kind of person I want to be. Like begets like. Al McGuire has now passed away, who's a very successful basketball coach for many, many years at Marquette University. Had a statement that I just swore, I think I like it, so I put in your notes. He said, a team should be the extension of the coach's personality. My teams were arrogant and obnoxious. And let me tell you something, he was. And that's what his teams were. In other words, he put himself, who he was, became who the teams were themselves. This is just an absolute fact. It works in your life, and it works also in my life. I was doing a leadership conference, and we were, again, in a question and answer period, and a fellow raised his hand, and I said, what do you want? And he said, I love this leadership stuff you're teaching. And he said, I got a question. He said, he was a young kid again. I've decided I'm going to be a leader. So now, he said, the question I have for you is, who should I start leading? And I looked at him and I said, the first person you should lead is yourself. Yourself. In fact, let me put it this way. If you wouldn't follow yourself, why should anyone else follow you? Now, this goes back to this law of magnetism. What are you and who are you on the inside? Because here's what I want you to say. You're going to attract people just like you. So what I would do as a leader is this. When I defined and understood the 3 or 4 or 5 top qualities of people that I wanted to attract to my organization, I would make sure 2 things. One, that I had those qualities in my life. And if I did not, I would make sure that I began to discipline myself to have those qualities in my life. Because who you are is who you attract. That's the way it works. It works that way every time. It works that way in the business community. I have the privilege of being with many companies, organizations, and corporations, and can I tell you, they all have a personality. When I'm out with the Walmart people, these are people that get up early, and these are people that love numbers and figures. If you go to one of their early morning Saturday morning meetings, not during the week, they do theirs on Saturday morning, they get all the stats from all the regions all over the country of how their Walmart stores are doing. And they're up early and they're beating those numbers and they're putting them up there and they're saying, you made it, you didn't make it, you were short this week, and this is how quickly. They love accountability and they love getting up and doing something just early and making sure that, you know, they're kind of the early bird gets the worm kind of a mindset. Now, that's who Walmart is. That's a culture. And they attract. What kind of people they attract? They attract those kind of people. I go with other companies and they love to study. They just love to learn and grow, and they're kind of they have a growing personal growth type of a culture and environment in them. And as long as they're growing and as long as they're learning, they know if they can grow themselves, they're growing their company. So they want a lot of meat. They want to keep saying, okay, how can I develop myself? They're always wanting programs to develop themselves. Now, what I'm saying is every organization has its own personality. But here's what I know. The culture of that organization determines the kind of people that they attract to it. What I have found is that there are some key areas of attraction. In other words, what I want to do is I want to define for you certain areas that the law of magnetism I know works for a fact. For example, number 1, your mission. Your mission of your company attracts a certain type of person. That's an absolute fact. And when you put your mission out, can I tell you what your mission does for your organization? It divides people. It attracts people who are like that and have a desire to have a mission like that, and it repels people who have no desire to be like that, and that is certainly not their goal or a mission
That's right.
in life. So when you lay out the mission, you attract certain people and you repel people based upon what your mission is, what you're trying to accomplish. Another area, number 2, is priorities. Whatever your priorities are in your organization and whatever the priorities of the leaders have to have, can I tell you something? That's the kind of priorities that the people are going to have. For example, when I gave the illustration of one of the other laws about the CEO that looked at the people and says, if anybody in my company asks you to do anything wrong, here's my personal phone number, you call me. Do you know what he was doing? The law of magnetism was operating. You know what he was? He was attracting people of integrity. He was attracting people who want to do the right thing. He was attracting people who said, yes, I will call you if somebody asks me to do something wrong. He was going for a high integrity, high character type person with that kind of statement. It's the law of magnetism. So your mission attracts certain people. Your priorities, it has much to do with the kind of person you attract. Number 3, age. I found that people group together by age to a certain extent. And I found that you get in certain organizations, they basically age with what the leaders are. You get in some companies, and they just got a bunch of young people that are just kind of going after it as fast as they possibly can. And age has a lot to do with the type of person that you attract to yourself. Number 4, your values. Oh my, this is huge. The values that you have are going to do a lot with what kind of a person that you're going to attract to your organization. For example, a high value to me is adding value to people. That's a huge value. That's right at the top for me. If somebody says, John, what do you want to do in life? It's very simple. My life is very simple. I want to add value to you. I want to come alongside of you. I want to write books that add value to you. I want to do lectures and teaching and tapes that will add value to you. I want to add value to you. My greatest goal is to take people to a higher level than they could ever get on their own. That's my desire. What kind of people do I attract? I tell you what kind of people I attract. People that want to add value to others. I don't attract selfish people. I don't attract people who are kind of basically in it for themselves and taking the journey by themselves and hoping to, at the end, to have just some huge reward that they give only to them. I don't attract selfish type people. Why? Because it's a value. The law of magnetism says you attract basically who you are. Number 5, another area I have found, is it would be very true, is in the area of background. A lot of times we attract people that have the same kind of background. Maybe it's we grew up in the same area, and so therefore we have common roots geographically. Perhaps we had common roots as far as our education, or perhaps the kind of business we're in. But basically, we attract people a lot of times based on our background. And then finally, the other indicator of the law of magnetism that's a key area of attraction is attitude. You attract people based on your attitude. Can I tell you what you've never found? You never found an organization where you've got a great attitude at the top and a poor attitude at the bottom. You don't see that. Attitudes come in. You know what? People with bad attitudes, they don't even want to be around people with good attitudes.
That's right.
It's that too much cheery stuff. You know what I'm saying? It just kind of weighs on them after a while. You know, you're just way too happy for me. You know, you're too excited about life. You know. So people with bad attitude, they're not attracted to people with good attitude. They don't even want to be around. I love a guy said, well, if you have a great attitude, you'll attract everybody. I said, no, you'll make some people sick.
That's right.
So like I said, I can't stand that person. They're happy, they're enjoying their life, they're going somewhere. Who wants to be happy, enjoy their life, and go somewhere? Could I have another cup of coffee, please? Now, those are areas that if you possess, will bring a sense of magnetism to you, and you'll attract like people. It's just an absolute fact. So look at your organization and ask yourself, who are we? Because by answering the question who you are, what you value, what is your mission statement, what your attitude is, what all that stuff is, and I would encourage you, this is a great exercise for you to do as a group. Once you get, quote, your DNA, your personality as a company or a culture, once you have figured it out, just understand this. You're going to attract a whole bunch of people just like you.
Very true.
Sweet.
Talk to me. Zoom people, talk to me.
Well, that kind of goes along the lines of not necessarily who you are is who you attract, but I believe that your kids, maybe this is totally off topic, but your kids don't become who you want them to be. They become who you are in a sense. So, but because I believe that our character and our personalities, we click and we gather with like-minded people.
And we rub off on each other.
Is that good? Oh man, that liver smells terrible.
Oh, go ahead. That was John. I thought it was Andy.
No, yeah, I was just gonna agree with Andy. Just like people with bad attitudes tend to kind of click together too. That and experience, like I didn't get what number 4 was on that on the 6 keys, but just experience, your past. I don't know. Never mind.
Well, number 4 was values.
Values.
Values. Okay. I mean, we do attract who we are. That's why churches tend to age with their pastor.
Well, and then I know that in the Bible, I don't know where, but I know where it talks about bad company corrupts good habits.
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't he talking about like trying to the 3 areas, the 3 qualities, if you want to be, if you want to have a good attitude, you want to be better at leadership, you should hang around with good leaders, right?
Sure. If you want to grow, you want to change, you hang around with people that have what you need. Okay. But we tend to attract who we are. That's, as I said, why churches tend to grow with age with the pastor. And the wise pastor will realize that and make the necessary changes to combat that. And they tend to, you tend to attract people that think like you do. And you tend to attract people of your same personality. And so, all of that is very true. We need to realize that, so that if we're attracting the wrong kind of people, as you said, we need to look in the mirror, realizing that that's probably who we are. And therefore, if we want to attract a different type of people, we're going to have to become a different type of person. So
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So you said the wise pastor will make decisions to combat the inevitability of attracting people your age or like you. How do you combat that? What does that look like?
You combat that really one of 2 ways. One is the way in which we did it, and that was to transition and bring in younger people. But that's not always the answer. Sometimes the answer is, because God still wants you there, you begin to bring people on staff or alongside or work with people who are younger, and give them some freedom to do some things. We started that process before we brought your parents on. And as an example, I'll never forget the day I called into my office 2 or 3 of the younger families and said, okay, we want to attract people your age. What are some changes we need to do to attract people your age? And nothing's off the table, nothing's sacred. I'm not going to have my feelings hurt. I'll never forget one of the responses. To this day, it blows my mind that this was even an issue. The welcome card. It's too old. And I thought, how can a welcome card be too old? But
That's when you realized.
that's when I realized I was too old. Yeah. But see, I didn't even see, I couldn't even connect with it. Now, I didn't come against what they were saying because I realized they were seeing something I didn't see. But when that happens, then you have to do one of two things. You either have to say, okay, change it. I'll go with it. Or you end up changing locations, bringing somebody in that is younger. I think that personally, and I'm just speaking personally now, because you asked me personally, so I'm going to speak personally. Even though I'm older, I really believe that being around schools has kept me younger. In other words, I'm younger for my age than a lot of people my age because I'm connecting with young people all the time, younger people all the time. But I still realize the difference. Okay. And that I'm not going to attract that younger generation. As an example, this isn't the reason that we brought on your parents, but a good plus to that was your parents had children of all ages. And as a pastor, the most effective youth group I ever had is when my kids were in high school. Why? They attracted. They attracted. And so you attract who you are. And what he's saying is very good. A good litmus test might be to look out and see who you've attracted and make a judgment at that point and then make the necessary changes, whether it be to replace yourself or to bring alongside younger people. And then you got to give them power. You've got to give them the power. Remember, you asked earlier tonight, if you need to make if you see things that aren't right, what should you do about it? Well, as I said, number one, do you have power in the situation? Number two, then, if you don't, do you at least have a relationship with the people? But you have to empower that group that you want the church to look like. And then you have to run interference for them. Right? And that's not always easy to do. So, good thoughts. What time's it getting to be? Let's try watching one more. I think we have time for one. Even if we don't have time to talk about it, it's a good one. So let's try one more.
Is that why you retired? Because they're changing the welcoming cards?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said, is that why you retired? They were changing the welcoming cards?
Yeah. Had a little bit more to do than just the welcoming cards. But yeah, let's go to the law of attraction. But that was a wake-up call. That was definitely a wake-up call.
21 irrefutable laws of leadership is the law of connection. And the law of connection says leaders touch a heart before. Maybe you need to underline that word before. They ask for a hand. In other words, when you really understand the law of connection, you realize that you have to touch a person emotionally and relationally before they'll ever begin to do things in a physical sense with you. You've got to touch their heart before you ask for their hand. This is a tough law for a lot of leaders because leaders are action-oriented, and a lot of times leaders don't want to mess with the relationship stuff.
That's right.
They don't want to mess with the connection stuff. They just say, look, here's where I'm going, and I want you to go with me, and let's go. And they don't want to do what I call the homework and the preparation needed for relationships. But let me just say this to you. I think to a great degree, relationship is leadership. Let me put it this way. People won't go along with you if they cannot get along with you. You don't want to take a trip with somebody you don't like. You don't want to take a long journey with somebody that you don't get along with. And every one of us know what it's like to work with somebody that we don't get along with. And you know, the good news is that you can work with them. The bad news is you don't want to take a vacation. How many of you know at least one person that you don't want to take a long trip with? Yeah. How many of you are seated beside that person right there? Don't raise that hand. Those second questions I ask you are always IQ questions. Keep your hand down. We all know what it's like. Every one of us know what it's like to have to work with people we don't care for. And that whole relationship, it just doesn't match. Now, here's what I'm saying. Leaders understand that they've got to connect with the heart before they can ask the hand. Going back to when I was doing the law of influence, going back to that for a moment, the second level in the laws of influence or the laws of leadership, the second level was the permission level, and that is people do things because they like you. So you have to begin to become likable. Starts with your appearance, starts with your face. Don't you just look at some people sometimes and just say, I don't care to be them? Haven't you been on an elevator, somebody gets on the elevator and you just look at it? You just look at it. They don't say a word. They haven't said one word. They haven't said a word to you, no one. They just get on the elevator and just look at it and just say, oh, thank God I'm not going home with them. And it amazes me, especially leaders who have to be in the people business, it amazes me how many of those leaders aren't good with people. And I just want to go up and to them and say, man, you don't have a shot at this. You're never going to be successful as a leader because people don't relate to you, not connect with them. That's why, 4 or 5 years ago, I wrote a book called Becoming a Person of Influence. And I wrote the book, Becoming a Person of Influence, and people look at it and they say, it's a relationship book because I talk about 10 ways to influence people. Well, it is a relationship book. You know what it really is? It's a soft leadership book. It teaches you how to influence others and relate to them because, again, if you do not touch your heart, you will not be able to ask them. Now, this is an area that I love because I love communication. I love connecting. And just let me try to get real practical with you and help you walk through this area of connecting with people. And I want you to know, before I give you the list, I would want you to know that I think connecting with people is a leader's responsibility. A lot of times I'll run the leaders and they'll say to me, well, my people my people aren't coming along. And when I was a kid, I used to go down to General Electric where they had where they had the shipping area, where trains were coming in and unloading stuff and they're picking up stuff. And I love to just go out there and sit, watch the trains come in and couple and uncouple the cars and all the. And you know what I always noticed? I always noticed that the locomotive always was responsible to back up and couple with the other car. I never one time saw a boxcar running around the track. Saying, man, where's the locomotive? I know that. No, if you're the leader. And by the way, when they would come back and they would hit those cars, that didn't mean that they connected with those cars. They didn't connect with those cars just because they hit them. Just as you don't connect with people just because you have a meeting. They had to learn to couple those cars. Once in a while, I run the leader and say, well, I had a meeting with them. We had lunch. Hello. You got to connect. You have to couple. So how do you connect? Number one, connect with yourself. The first thing to do is to be able to connect with yourself. Let me just put it this way. If you have never connected emotionally with yourself, you'll never be able to connect emotionally with someone else. Right. You have to know yourself. You have to accept yourself. You have to love yourself. You can't love someone else if you don't love yourself. You can't relate to others if you can't relate to yourself. If nobody's home internally, there'll be no one home externally. Connect with yourself. Number two, share with openness and sincerity. What I have found is that it's just best to be open and sincere with people. It develops a sense of trust. Number three, live your message. Very simple. What you ask your people to do, do it. In fact, a leader should never ask his or her people to do something that that leader is unwilling to do himself. Remember, be a tour guide, not a travel agent. Don't send people, take people. Live your message. Flesh it out. They ought to be able not only to hear your words, they ought to be able to see your life. And let me tell you something. Hearing your words and seeing your life ought to be the same. And when what you say and what you do, when your behavior and your words match, it's just tremendous what you can do as far as leading and developing people. Number 4, know your people. Very simple. You cannot lead people until you know them. You have to know what the keys to their life is. You have to understand what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. You got to spend, and the only way that you can know your people is to spend time with your people. That's why leaders walk slowly through the crowd. What was it? Many, many, many years ago. Management by walking around. Boy, that became huge then across America. But it's just a trick. It's a great concept. Still is. Walk slowly through the crowd. Spend time with your people. Understand them. Get to know who they are. Know their strengths, their weaknesses. If I can stop right now and ask you as a leader, what are the key points of the people that you lead? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What do they do well? What do they love? What do they buy into? What don't they buy into? What are their values? If I could ask those kind of questions, would you be able to give me answers, or would you just be given kind of shots in the dark? See, leaders understand that you don't lead everybody the same way. People have different strengths, different giftnesses, different desires, different goals. And the great leaders understand the only way you can lead people effectively is by knowing them well. So know your people. Number 5, communicate on their level. Don't communicate on your level. Come down to where they are. Understand what they're thinking. The expression I have is put the cookies on the lower shelf. Let everybody have one. Don't be an educator. An educator takes something simple and makes it complicated. Be a communicator. Take something complicated and make it simple. Get it down to their level so they can understand it and grab hold of it. Number 6, give yourself totally to the people of the message. Whatever your vision is, whoever your people are, give yourself to both. Don't be a leader that buys into the vision and not the people. A leader that buys into the vision and not the people will be a leader who has a vision only for himself or herself. And don't be a person that buys into the people and not the vision. The good news is you have great relationships, but you aren't going to buy into the vision and the people. Both are essential. Number 7, believe totally in the people and the message. Believe totally in the message and the vision and the people. Here's what I love, and I think it's very true. It's wonderful when the people believe in the leader, but it's even more wonderful when the leader believes in the people. Be a leader that believes in your people. Number 8, share how the vision or the message has touched you. The only way that anyone else will buy into the lesson, the message, the vision, the mission that you're on, the only way they'll ever buy it is if you say, look, here's what it's doing for me. Here's the areas of change I'm bringing to my life to bring this vision. Always let them see how it has positively affected you before you ask them to let it positively affect them. And number 9, offer direction and hope. Come alongside of them and offer direction and hope. And remember this, leaders are dealers in hope. Somebody comes up to you and say, what are you? You say, I'm a hope leader. A classic example of the law of connection is Herb Kelleher, the CEO of Southwest Airlines. Several years ago, I think it was in USA Today, I read these following words, and I want you to see them because this is classic law of connection. Thanks, Herb. This was paid for by his 16,000 employees on Bosses Day. Thanks, Herb, for remembering every one of our names, for supporting the Ronald McDonald House, for helping load baggage on Thanksgiving, for giving everyone a kiss, and we mean everyone, for listening, for running the only profitable major airline, for singing at our holiday party, for singing only once a year, for letting us wear shorts and sneakers to work, for golfing at the Luck Classic with only one club, for out-talking Sam Donaldson, for riding your Harley-Davidson into Southwest headquarters, for being a friend, not just a boss. Happy Bosses Day from each one of your 16,000. That's the law of connection.
Okay, very good. Anybody care to respond to that? leaders touch a heart before they ask for a hand. That's the problem with too many leaders. They're expecting people to follow, and they've not touched the heart. They've not ministered to the people. And you must begin to become likable. Some interesting thoughts. Anyone else?
I actually have one.
Sure.
Kind of. I need to learn to walk the crowd. My husband is more the one that gets out and talks to people and mingles, and I'm always standing beside him. I'm a little bit more introvert in that area. But I do, when I do develop relationships, I really do connect with the heart.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, very true. But when we realize something like that about ourselves, then we need to learn how to reach out. Like my wife, I'm much better in crowds. Well, let me say this: I'm much better in the pulpit than I am one-on-one. Okay, and so I've said to my wife sometimes, how do I become sociable with people one-on-one? And she said, ask questions. Ask them how their family's doing. Ask them, if there's something you can pray about. Ask them how the work's going. And because she said people are interested in talking about what's going on in their life, and just act as though you're interested. And but it's hard for some of us to do that, and we have to get out of our comfort zone in order to do it.
Yeah, that's I used to be in sales, and I wasn't very good at it. But one of the things they teach you is, just like you're saying, you may not know an individual, but find something that you do know about them, and just be interested, ask about it, connect with them on that level. If it's anything like just looking at what they're wearing or, their haircut or anything, just the first thing you can notice about them, and then just kind of connect with them on that level, and it just kind of brings them in. You connect.
Right. It's connection. Okay, guys. Well, this class is over. We will be back next week for this class. I am going to log out so that I can render this recording, and then I'll log back in time for the next class. So those of you that are taking the next class, I will see you then, and I hope this has been beneficial for you. I enjoy this teaching, so hopefully you're gaining from it as well. So we will end this meeting, and I'll log back in.